Tiffany Ramsey. I'm the head of compliance and risk for Engaging Networks, and I've been with Engaging Networks coming up on 3 years. And this is my first time in Toronto with ENCC, so it's great to see all of you Toronto people. So with me today is one of our partners, Eric. And Eric, let me let you introduce yourself.
So Eric Rudeau, some of you in the room. I'm about a 20-year or so in the digital fundraising and technology space.
That's how I think of digital. Yeah, I wasn't sure. So
as Timmy said, compliance and privacy is not the sexiest of topics, but it's actually incredibly important, and it's a big there's a big opportunity in it to actually create a significantly better donor experience. So we'll dive into that topic.
Yeah, and it's great that Eric is here as a partner because he can provide some insight on some of this compliance stuff and how his organization is helping clients through this. So let's go to the next slide. So our agenda today, I want to talk about data privacy and protection and our compliance tool that we use internally at Engaging Networks to help meet all of the industry regulations that we need to address. Also going to look at how you can secure your donors with what is called Security Center. How many people are familiar with Security Center? Can I see a show of hands?
Three.
Okay, well after today you'll know about Security Center. And then we'll talk a little bit more about tools for your team. So let's go ahead to the next slide. So this is a very busy slide here, but I wanted to pack everything in here. The gist of this slide is saying that we're very serious about data privacy and data protection at Engaging Networks. And because of that, we've aligned with quite a few industry regulations that you see there. So there's HIPAA, GDPR, SOC 2, PCI, and the EU AI Act. And you can see the next column talks about some of those we pay an external auditor to come and assess us, that's required, and some of those audits are internal assessments that we do ourselves. And then the definition of each one of those is listed there. So HIPAA is a U.S. law for healthcare. So we started getting a lot more healthcare clients, hospitals that want to use Engaging Networks. And so we need to be HIPAA compliant. And that's a U.S.-based law. But GDPR is a European law, and it is the most stringent data protection law, data privacy law, and many other state laws within the U.S. and even the Canadian PIPEDA law is based on GDPR. So by aligning ourselves with GDPR, we're essentially taking care of PIPEDA for Canada and in the U.S. Unfortunately, in the U.S. we don't have an overarching privacy law. Every state now is coming out with their own, but again, it's really all pointing up towards GDPR. So that's pretty much all I want to speak to on this slide.
Would most people in the room say they're familiar with all of these? Yeah, a few hands. A few of them? Yeah, okay. How about Law 25 in Quebec? Yeah. So it's interesting to see what Tiffany was saying. Some of these things are encompassed in larger international privacy acts. But also we do have to kind of integrate in our own Canadian market and look at what are the specifics that we have to really pay attention to as well.
All right, so with all of those things that we need to comply with, it would be very hard for us to do that with the limited, very small compliance staff that we have. Which is myself and a new contractor that we brought on board thanks to Mon. Where's Mon? Mon, yes, I have a compliance coordinator now who's working with me. And some of you may have actually received some communication from our new compliance coordinator. But I also use a tool called Vanta. Vanta is a GRC tool, that word stands for Governance, Risk, and Compliance. That actually allows us to operate as a much larger compliance department because it's integrated into our AWS footprint. So all of our backend servers are in AWS, and this tool integrates into that and does vulnerability testing against our backend environment. It allows us to do access controls. It houses all of our policies, pushes out training to all of our employees. I mean, you can see the list on the left. Vulnerability management, vendor risk management. So I've shown a couple of the reports that are there. For example, under people compliance. You can see that we're, again, pushing out we handle onboarding. For every employee that joins us, we do background checks on them. They have to attest to our policies. So there's a lot of employee-related stuff. I already talked about the audits that we do, and then vendor risk assessment. So you should be happy to know that any vendor that we are working with, we are doing thorough assessments to make sure that they are not a threat to the data that we host. So that's something constant that we're doing.
I think that the important thing to note here is that like Engaging Networks is essentially doing a lot of its homework to make sure that at the application layer, your data is safe, your stuff is safe, the way that people engage with you is safe and secure and up to compliance, which is good to know, as you're taking these conversations back to your own organizations, that something you're getting out of the box with Engaging Networks is this level of thoughtfulness and compliance. That doesn't mean that there isn't still stuff for you to do and to know, but it does mean that the application layer, you have a pretty strong safety belt.
All right, so now let's talk about securing your donors with Security Center.
Thank you.
All right. So I asked for a show of hands already of how many people are familiar with Security Center. This is a screenshot. The way that you access Security Center, if you're not already familiar, is you would log into your Engaging Networks console, and up at the top where your name is, there's a drop down, and you would see a little line there for Security Center. And then you would get that main page there that has quite a few bullets that we put there. And again, we're pushing this as our one-stop shop for security for your platform. And I'm going to walk through these here a little bit here in a moment. But I'll just talk briefly. The very first one is something called our Trust Center. And I'll talk about that a little bit later at the end. But well, one other thing here too. As I get into the other slides, what you'll see here is on this first page, down at the bottom, it shows page vulnerability overviews. So one of those bullets that you, one of those icons that you would click on actually is going to show you vulnerabilities that we are detecting from internal scanning. So when you log into this, you would see if you have any critical, high, or medium vulnerabilities. Now this has been a page that has been out there for quite a while. Unfortunately, I don't think a lot of people are aware of that and have been actioning on this. So now that we have Christine on board, and again, thank you, Mon, and thank you, Clint, for funding that, she's actually starting to reach out to some of our clients and let you know that you need to address this. So this next, I'm just blowing this up a little bit. The first thing you want to do is look at your low volume pages. And this is an opportunity for you to clean up any pages that maybe you don't need, that's not getting any volume. Clean those up because that reduces your compliance and your risk footprint. And do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody who's been on the platform for more than a few years knows it's really easy to end up in a place with a lot of open and active pages. As an external agency that goes into a lot of these accounts, sometimes you go in and you just go, wow, there's a boatload of pages in here. And you think to yourself, like, are these all actually in use? And usually the answer is no. It's just that no one is running through a systematic process of actually closing things down. And one of the things that we really like about Engaging Networks is it's actually surfacing this for you. And a lot of other platforms, that is, you just wander around and click on things and wonder, is this something we're actually using? So I think it's really important. It doesn't mean that you need to go through and actually shut off every low traffic page. Sometimes there's a reason why it's a low volume page. But I think the thing that's important here is that it's actually surfacing that for you as an organization and bringing that information out of the forefront.
The next one, vulnerability management. Again, this is showcasing any vulnerabilities that we've detected from our internal scanning to show you things that maybe, for example, outdated JavaScript that you need to update on for the pages that you've created. So again, that would be reflected under that high, critical, or medium vulnerabilities that you can see on that page.
And I think much to the same point, I think one of the things, someone was saying earlier, one of the things that's beautiful about Engaging Networks is its flexibility and customizations. It's the reason why a lot of organizations choose it, because it does allow you to kind of define and build. It's got a really nice box of Lego. You can build a lot of stuff. As I said earlier, when you start building on top of the application layer, engaging networks is no longer actually quite as liable, or you are a bit more liable for the things that you're actually building. Right? So that's where it becomes important as a tool perspective. It's really nice that this is actually getting surfaced. You also get this information and perhaps a little bit more in detail when you do your quarterly scans with your vendor.
Next slide, please. All right, so another bullet that's on there is downloading your page list for PCI scanning. So this is only relevant to you if you have fundraising pages. What this provides you is a list of all of your pages, because this is something that you need to give to your ASV vendor. ASV stands for Approved Scanning Vendor, and our preferred vendor is Control Case. So if you are a fundraising client with us already, you've already heard of this, you've heard of Control Case, and hopefully you're all in the cadence of having quarterly scanning done. Note I have a bullet up there in yellow that says this is not applicable for smart pages. So as Eric was alluding to, our tool allows for a great deal of flexibility and customization in the platform, but with that comes more responsibility around owning any vulnerabilities or any externally referenced scripts, for example, that are on those payment pages. The new Smart Pages minimizes that. In fact, it takes away a lot of that responsibility. Eric, anything else?
Yeah, I'm actually just curious, just by show of hands, how many people are using Control Case right now? Anybody using a different vendor? Yeah, okay, interesting. I know we've had a couple clients who've looked at other vendors and then ended up going with Control Case. So I'm just curious if anyone has actually is using other vendors, but it does seem like most people are going with the Control Case.
Okay. Next slide, please. So on this page here, I'm really just highlighting the reason why it's important that we have to do scanning of payment pages. This is coming straight from the PCI Council, so this is not Engaging Networks, this is the PCI Council, and what's happened over the past few years is they've put more increased scrutiny over payment page scripts. And Eric, as a former developer, can tell you even that you're vulnerable to web hackers that are out there if you're not creating these pages the right way and putting the right amount of controls around it. So the types of risks that you could be susceptible to are alteration risks for your scripts. External scripts could be embedded in there, and also I have highlighted in yellow, potential attackers can use seemingly harmless scripts to upload malicious scripts. So that's why the PCI Council has put a lot more scrutiny around the scripts that are on your payment pages.
And I think one of the things that's really important, we see it as an external agency when we're looking at building customizations or building kind of on the platform is, just being clear about what it means to actually go through that. I think, so what Tiffany was saying, a lot of these are new-ish in the last few years in terms of the increased responsibility, perhaps, is the best way to put it, that the PCI Compliance Council is putting on you. So we see it more often than not, where an organization will, especially for these scans, will have something that was built 5, 8 years ago, and no one has gone back to take a look. The page still works. Right? Organizations tend to only really get concerned when the page stops working, but just because the page works doesn't mean it's actually not a vulnerable page. So I think it's really important, because if you as the organization are somehow involved in malicious shenanigans, that sucks for you as an organization, but it really hurts your donor trust, right? And so these things are really important. Compliance is not the most sexy of topics, but it is significantly less sexy to have a data breach or to have exposed donor information, things like that on the web that are a result of your work. So perhaps it's not sexy, but it's incredibly important.
And one more key point, Eric brought up the fact that some of these pages may have been built 5 years ago, but think about hackers. Hackers are coming up with new ways to get into things every day. So if your page was built 5 years ago, you're already behind the curve, and you could have outdated things that need to be updated. So hence the need for this. Next page.
And it's actually probably worth pointing out too that in the age of AI, the acceleration of this issue is actually incredibly important. Like, I don't think you saw the news in the past week or so, but Claude withheld releasing a new version of their AI to the market because it was so incredibly good at finding vulnerabilities in existing software that they basically were like, oh, we can't release that to the world. And it exposed a whole bunch of long-standing security flaws in very established and believed to be bulletproof frameworks.
So this is just going in a little bit more detail about those externally referenced scripts on your payment pages. So the requirement is that you do 3 things for those scripts. And let me point out, when your ASD, in this case control case, scans your pages, they're looking for vulnerabilities, you're going to get a report. But in addition to that, you're also going to get a spreadsheet of any external scripts that they found on your page. And they want you to do 3 things. They want you to, number 1, understand. So go back and look at those scripts and, yes, I understand what this script is for. Number 2, you're explicitly stating that, yes, it's required for the functioning of my page. And then I think that last statement says, yes, it's installed securely. So something like that. And they just really want you to actually go through and acknowledge each of those scripts. Now, that bottom sentence talks about many of our clients are stumbling and fumbling over this act right here. They're not following up with this. So in the past, the first year when we were really pushing ASD scanning, this was not a requirement. This didn't become a requirement until April of 2025. So the first time you got scanned, you didn't see this, where they were presenting a spreadsheet with you. The next time around it was like, oh, all of a sudden I've got this spreadsheet and I've got to do what? And so some clients aren't responding, or maybe they are not seeing the email from Control Case, and we're reaching out to you to say, hey, did you know Control Case is waiting for you, and if you don't respond to this, you're going to end up getting a non-compliant scan for the year. Even though your pages are perfectly fine, you have no vulnerabilities, you just didn't follow through with that little act of just looking at the other scripts. So, Eric, I've got an actual sample. We can go to the next page. I don't know if you can see this, but the spreadsheet that they send, in the first column, it just says, you know, these are the 3 things that you need to do. The next column would actually be an enumeration of your scripts. And it could be something like Google Tag Manager is one of the scripts, for example, or something that's used for Stripe. And so really this is for you, because if your scripts were created 5 years ago, maybe by someone that is no longer in-house, or an organization that you're no longer affiliated with, now's a good time to go out and review that to say, oh yeah, I know what this is, or in some cases, some clients have said, oh, we don't need that anymore, okay?
Yeah, it's actually one of the things that, so with our support service clients, it's actually something that we do with them on a quarterly basis. They will get this scan, and a lot of them will just toss it to us, and we'll go through and actually audit what it is, and go back and say, yep, everything looks good, these are the reasons why you have it, and you can submit this in as not a Control Case. So if you have questions about that, we'd be happy to just give you some insight on how we approach it. Just to give you some insight on that, because it is, to Tiffany's point, it's incredibly important that you don't let it slide. Even if you are completely compliant, you want to make sure that you're actually completing the process.
Yeah, and so that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring this out here in this larger audience, that oftentimes clients just don't understand what they need to do and how simple it is. And I've gotten on many client calls one-on-one and just walked them through it. And once they looked at it, it's like, oh yeah, I get it. It's not that difficult. I just didn't understand maybe the email from Control Case. So we're working to try to help them with the communications piece of that. But another key point here is, again in yellow, that splash point there, is this would not be applicable for Smart Pages, because again, with Smart Pages, these are locked down templates that now you have no customization to add any externally referenced scripts. So in that case, Engaging Networks is going to own scanning those pages. We're going to own attaching to any externally referenced scripts. But again, that's your choice. If that's one of the beauties, I think, the selling points of Engaging Networks, is that many clients want that customization. They want to be able to create beautiful pages with everything that Eric and other companies like that can help them to do. But if that's not the case, and you want something more templatized and simple, then Smart Pages would be something that you would go for.
Absolutely. I think we'll see, I know Smart Pages is pretty new in the last stretch here, but I think you'll probably see organizations developing a hybrid model over the coming year or two, where those Smart Pages are going to be serving certain functions and standing for absorbers of other functions.
Yeah. So just to kind of ride on that a little bit, these are some of the things that your partners could help you with if you don't have the in-house staff. So, many of the clients that I've talked with one-on-one, some of them say, well, we don't have anybody to do this. This was built by a partner or, someone who's no longer here. So these are the things that your partners can help you do. So Eric, you want to kind of speak to those?
Yeah, I mean, jQuery, Bootstrap, these are probably on everybody's pages. They're almost cornerstone of development. And they are constantly versions. So it is important to stay current with what they're releasing. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's not a many hours job. You can certainly do it internally. It's just you've got to swap out the old one, bring in the new one, and when there are significant changes in these frameworks, you just want to check to make sure you're not using something that they deprecated or changed, because that also happens, which then changes the way your page actually works. But big picture, these are the types of, and there's a whole host of other, tag manager, different tracking scripts, there's all kinds of things that are going to come up and be sort of flagged as external scripts. But yeah, these are certainly common ones. I swear I have it working.
Next slide, please. Can you have a look at that? Next slide. Okay, so let's talk briefly then about a few other tools that you can use to help with your shared responsibility. So what we just looked at, going through those external scripts, that's part of your responsibility of being on the platform. Engaging Networks owns so much more. We are responsible for the security of the entire platform, but there are some things that you need to do. So let's go to the next couple pages. So one of them is two-factor authentication. So we make two-factor authentication available for you to implement, and this is for your console login, for your users who are logging into your Engaging Networks console. We're really pushing for you to make this mandatory. This is another area where you can make your platform more secure. Instead of making it optional, let's make it mandatory. And many of our healthcare clients, they already say, no, this has to be mandatory because they're very serious about security.
It'd be interesting to see, I don't know, question spot is, do you think that two-factor authentication will be something that will become mandatory on the platform? Yeah. So that's
in general, practical.
Yeah, and I think everyone appreciates that. But yeah, I do think that you'll likely see two-factor authentication become the norm in the next little while.
Next slide here. User access control. So for your systems, your logins, you have a super admin who is responsible for adding additional users to your account, and part of that is managing that access. So you have the ability to create groups and to stratify the permissions that people have on your system. So again, that's part of your responsibility, and we have on our support information about how to properly manage your user accounts. And so that's basically I want to add here. I think it's pretty straightforward.
I think one thing that's worth pointing out here when it comes to user access control is I don't know how frequently organizations actually go take a peek at how many admin users they have, but we have definitely over the years logged in and said, no, you have 50 admin users. And I go through, there's only 3 of us. And it's like, yeah, okay, so then you get to go through and actually kind of audit that and remove a lot of it, because as you may know, turnover in our sector is a little high, especially at the application usage layer, the sort of getting stuff done layer. And so it doesn't take very many years of application usage to have a pretty significant stack of admins that are no longer with your organization. And that is even more important, I think, for API users. Work with an agency or an external provider of some kind, and you've given them an API access, just audit that every now and then, because that is it's a pretty powerful way of accessing the platform.
And speaking of auditing, I'm not sure how many people in here are aware, but we do have built-in auditing capability within the Engaging Networks tool. So you want to go in and audit who has logged in, what are they doing? So you can, the screenshot there is showing who's actually edited a page. So this is, again, part of your role. Manage your users, manage their access, limit the number of admins, and make sure you're auditing what's happening on your platform. So again, this is all available via the company.
Yeah, and this is, especially as an external agency, we love this feature.
Okay.
If something gets changed into the loop, you can go, well, I know who did it. And usually it's somebody did it by accident.
And then Trust Center. So I mentioned the Trust Center before. This is something that is made available via Vanta, but this is for you as our clients. This is our way of showcasing what we're doing. So each year, when you all have to fill out your self-assessment questionnaire, most of our clients are reaching out to us saying, hey, I need your attestation of compliance for PCI. Or some clients are reaching out to us for our SOC report. And this is where you should go, is to our Trust Center. So this is a self-serve place where you can go and see everything that we're doing from a compliance standpoint, download any of those reports that you need. And for example, those of you who are new clients, any new client that's coming on board, usually they have to pull their IT people in and they want to assess us as a vendor. Sometimes it's having us answer a 100 or 200 questionnaire, security questionnaire, but if we could say, hey, did you check out our Trust Center first? You can find everything you need there. So I just want to continue to promote our Trust Center as a place that you can go, have your IT people or your compliance people or your external auditors get what they need to assess us from the Trust Center. All right, so conclusions and takeaways. Let's just quickly go to, so the conclusion here is really that we are serious about data privacy and data protection, and we want you to do your part to secure your donor page. We've showed you how you can do that by using Security Center and some of the other tools that we talked about today, and that's pretty much it. Any concluding remarks?
I mean, the other thing I would add to that is I was looking at some stats that I came last after we talked because I was curious about the state of the perception of privacy right now. And like 80% of people in the Cisco survey were sort of saying like it's incredibly, they see it as incredibly important. And about 65% of people will not transact with an organization or website that doesn't feel like it's giving the right opportunities for privacy control. But only 8% of people believe that it's actually functioning, working. So we have a pretty significant gap between what we want and what we feel like we're getting. And I think that that is, as the nonprofit sector, as people in this room, I think it's actually something that is within our control to improve that, at least for ourselves. We can't control what the outside world is doing, but I think from our sector space, there is a big opportunity to build that trust and have that, have that bridge so that the relationship stays strong.
Okay, very good. So one other note too, last week I did a webinar on that went into a little bit more detail on the payment page scanning and things. So if you didn't get a chance to see that and you want to go deeper into that, I would encourage you to go back and look at that webinar.